Can you hear me okay?
Got you loud and clear.
Great, welcome. Can you see my screen all right?
I do. Looks good.
Yeah, it looks like we got some people coming in. Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Driving Down Risk, where AI meets HOP and compliance and safety. Looks like we've got about 50 or so people here so far. We'll give them another minute, but Tim got some interesting responses coming in on the poll.
I see that. It almost what I predicted yesterday we were having this conversation, but I definitely see that there's some need for more education across the board. So this is nice.
Yeah, awesome. One more minute, we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like only a few people incorporating hop into their workflows. But an interesting amount of people incorporating both. That's pretty cool. About 10%. I wonder where that would have been a year ago, or even two.
Yeah. But
And
out
then,
of six, with that 64 people that are here, this barely three of them are incorporating hop ideas.
yep. But more so that are doing both with AI and hop, which is pretty cool. And then to your point, Tim, we've got 20 or so out of the 50 respondents that are not that familiar with hop. So
Yeah.
we'll have a great opportunity. All right, what do you say we go ahead and jump right in and get into the presentation? Welcome everybody today to this Voxel hosted presentation, Driving Down Risk, where AI meets HOP, or Human and Organizational Performance, and Compliance and Safety. Really excited to be here today alongside of Tim to lead this webinar and have a discussion with all of you. Appreciate the responses that have come in thus far to this question. Which of these safety strategies you're using? This will help us, kind of, form our discussion today. And it looks like overall, in terms of the responses, 39% of the group or so is using AI tools to help with safety management. I can tell you my personal experience working in AI and safety now for about 3 years. That was not the case. Not to go too deep into this, but at my first ASSP conference in 2023, coming into this role, people literally would run away from you when they heard you were using AI. Not the case anymore, with roughly 40% of the group here actually utilizing AI to manage safety risk. A few people that are using some HOP principles or methodologies in their safety management programs, and then about 20% or so of the group using AI tools and HOP methods together, which is pretty awesome. And then, an equally large amount of the group, about 35 or 37% or so of the group, that's not familiar with HOP, but that's okay because we're going to get into that here within a minute. Before we get too far in today's presentation, love to go through some brief introductions. Tim, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Thanks, Skipper. My name's Tim Page-Bottorff with the American Society of Safety Professionals, and I'm the senior vice president there. Also, yeah, I do have a job. I'm a senior director for Jones Lang LaSalle. I had the technology division, so all things technology, like software, hardware, you name it. We've got 16 professionals that have 30 other direct reports plus another 100 of safety professionals. And I'm honored to be invited here. And thanks for that, Skipper. And how about back to you?
Yeah, and Tim and I first met at Safety 25 earlier this year and started the conversations around putting a webinar like this together. So really excited to see it come to fruition just a few months later. Um, my background, so I have roughly 20 years of safety and risk management experience. Prior to coming over here to Voxel in 2023, I had a career working for the Hartford for 17 years as a risk management and safety professional. Started out in field loss control and worked my way up to a national accounts manager, where I've literally visited thousands of customers, seen many different types of operations, everything from a barber shop to a huge manufacturing facility like a steel manufacturer, and everything in between. And through my career have helped dozens of risk managers and safety professionals really utilize technology to their advantage to drive total cost of risk in the right direction. Here at Voxel, I serve as our head of customer solutions. I help our early stage customers integrate computer vision, artificial intelligence into their existing safety programs so that their results can be early and quantifiable, both in terms of improving safety culture and then driving ROI positively. So, in terms of what we're going to discuss here today, we're going to set the stage with why this matters now, dive into the benefits of computer vision, artificial intelligence, and then really spend most of our time today talking about the convergence of artificial intelligence, in relationship to compliance-based safety, and then also HOP, or human and organizational performance, and then talk about advancing both of those and really the melding of all three in terms of the future of workplace safety. So, Tim, your thoughts here. Why now? Why does this matter?
Thanks for that. I appreciate the intro and honored again to be here. The thread of collaboration keeps continuing up, and a lot of folks have taken this either or approach. And what I'm trying to understand is that there's all kinds of different ways to get to where we've got to be. In other words, the destination. And so for me, it's important that we all come together for a very big positive impact at least on the strategic side. Now, tactically, we can get to operationalizing things, but for all of our activities, at least the strategic direction on where we're going, we need to come together with that. And I believe that we all have the same destination, and how we get there, it might be different, but I found that the collaboration between all three of these elements that we're going to talk about today will help achieve our goals in safety, no matter how you define it. And so a lot of folks define safety differently. The natural tendency is to use the old traditional term, which is fine. I mean, again, the destination is still the same, but the traditional term is that safety is defined as the absence of injury. But in HOP, human and organizational performance, it's actually defined as you count the presence of capacity. AI, HOP, and all of the elements of compliance, I believe, all add capacity and eventually, hopefully, prevent injuries. And so, a new lens, in my mind, as we characterize all the things that we're going to talk about today, HSSE, that's what we need right now as a new lens. It's not one or the other, it's one and another. That's the lens. And I will think that maybe we could redefine the definition of safety glasses. Maybe. I don't know. If we have to do that, then let's do it. But it's a new lens, and that's what we need right now. So that's the reason why this is important.
Tim, I really like that, and I'm also super jealous. I've been working in safety and AI now for 3 years, and you came up with this new term of safety glasses, which is a little bit different, but more forward thinking than the typical term. So I might have to steal that from you, but luckily it's our branded webinar, so it might be my content now. But I love
Okay.
that.
Okay. Steal shamelessly, please.
So, and before we get into really this convergence of AI and HOP, and compliance-based safety, let's level set on really how AI is transforming the way that we see safety, or as Tim so eloquently put it, the new way of looking at safety glasses. Really, we got to start off with just a basic understanding of what AI and in the simple AI is, and in the simplest terms, that it enables machines to learn, and whether you realize it or not, and I think most of us do at this point because it's part of our everyday lives. um, AI is here and it's not going anywhere. So basic types of AI that, you're most commonly going to run into, both in your personal and your professional life, include machine and deep learning, robotics, generative AI, and then computer vision, artificial intelligence. Just touch on these, with a few very succinct examples. So when it comes to machine and deep learning, it's basically AI's ability to not only understand a set of data, but understand the context within that set of data to make a decision or a prediction. Very simple example, and I'm going to date myself as soon as I say this. My Pandora playlist knows that because, I listen to Green Day, I also might want to listen to Fuel. Same way that your Netflix subscription right now is probably keyed in on the fact that you're ready to watch one holiday movie after another. Another, I think, really relevant example for all of us today would be generative AI, like large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, you name them. Think of that as your creative friend that can fake being an expert at anything and also will always try to elevate you in what you're doing. Um, I think that this, generative AI is really interesting. And if nobody's taken notice, now everybody can write a perfect email with Gemini or Copilot, riding alongside of them. But I'm always encouraging my children to, focus on the human element of communication because that's going to be so important here over the next coming years. And then, the one that I think is really most near and dear to my heart because it's really where I focused my time for the past 3 years is CVAI, or computer vision artificial intelligence, which is basically what we're doing is we're utilizing visual cognition and cameras to understand utilizing AI to basically, be able to identify patterns that could, in essence, lead to the identification of risk within the workplace. So, identifying if a powered industrial truck is too close to a person, or identifying if somebody's not wearing the right PPE, because the AI, through its pattern recognition technology, is basically able to understand the good versus the bad. Very similarly to how you would when you walk the floor of your environment or of your company. So let's dive a little bit more deeply into computer vision AI and basically what it's capable of doing. And I'm just giving you a few examples here on this slide. It's capable of much more than this, but we got to keep the presentation moving today. So, for instance, on the left-hand side, computer vision AI can autonomously identify and in real time that this powered industrial truck and this worker on this dock at a manufacturing facility are getting too close to one another. In fact, so close that the AI can understand the context of the scene and that the worker is actually physically able to touch that powered industrial truck, calling that out as a near miss. When it comes to machine hazards, the AI can identify if somebody's getting up into or on top of a machine, if they're reaching their hand into a machine. Of course, this is, based, of course, you're utilizing cameras for this. So, camera quality or camera placement is required as well, depending on the level of depth that you're looking for, the level of nuance you want to understand. But the AI can identify, unsafe or even safe human and machine interactions. And then finally, it's not all about workplace safety too. There's also an operational component to utilizing computer vision AI to identify operational risks in the workplace. For instance, you can identify if food product is touching the floor or if somebody's touching food product or food manufacturing equipment without wearing gloves, like we're seeing over here in the right-hand side of the screen. Tim, I know for me, I think the obvious, draw here or the obvious link to human and organizational performance is context. Do you see any context when you look at these video clips on the screen?
Every single one of them, actually. And the irony is that, as we will discuss in just a few minutes, that context drives behavior, which is a term or a philosophy within human and organizational performance. So, to give you an idea, a distracted forklift operator may not see the risk. Well, it's really the easy place to blame. And so, context for me, what I would be wondering, why is that person distracted? Is there too much pedestrian activity? Should we set a system up to guide that? And I believe, as I've seen what organizations have been doing, especially with Voxel and their product, is that computer vision AI will actually help with this and will allow the employee to use a term that we use in HOP, fail safely. So properly managed organizational systems will enhance clarity. It'll actually help remove what I like to say is unwanted ambiguity. And so in HOP, we can learn together, and learning is absolutely vital. And all employees, rightfully so, can actually own the program. And so you want them to get to a place, context drives behavior, where they actually say they want to do this thing versus they have to do this thing. And traditionally with compliance, you probably have heard it before. OSHA says we've got to do it because, well, it's driven by compliance. Well, that kind of motivates supervisors, but it doesn't really do a good job of motivating employees. And as you can see here, this Venn diagram, it's setting the context for you. This is kind of a high level overview of the emergence, or at least the convergence, but at a very high level, compliance drives most motivation. We've got to do it because OSHA says so or EPA says so. And you probably have heard it before, or maybe even you've said it before. So that, again, is great for motivating supervisors and management, but not employees. Then we kind of need the hazard identification in place and the control, which is a mechanism of safety management. So asking for a hazard ID is kind of better to ask from those people that know the risks better than we do. And another term that we use in HOP is, driving that context. Well, sometimes we worry about the work as we imagine the work versus how the work is actually being done. We can write policy all day long, and I'm thinking that maybe computer vision AI will help us find those hazards. Skipper, what else can it do?
Yeah, I think really the sky's the limit, and we're seeing just this convergence between identifying these opportunities around normal work, which is so exciting to me because we are in essence preventing, the next event or the next injury. And what's even more exciting to me is the benefits of how computer vision AI can, take the compliance lift off of the shoulders of safety professionals to allow them to focus more time on solutioning. So let's dive into that, Tim. Let's talk a little bit about, the state of compliance today and how it's being advanced with computer vision AI.
Sure. Strategically, compliance is the floor and not the ceiling. So, in other words, it's just the baseline of what you have to accomplish. And in having direct conversations with David Keeling, who's the new, federal U.S. If you're outside of the states, he's the U.S. now new director of OSHA. He's saying that we got to work on going beyond compliance, and he has often been quoted as saying things like HOP and SIF. So, what does it mean to go beyond compliance? Well, doing something other than just basic compliance, because remember, compliance is the floor and not the ceiling. So going beyond compliance could be these other things like human and organizational performance, or even what Skipper's been talking about advancing with computer vision AI.
Yeah, and what I think is really exciting here is that you're utilizing AI to monitor that baseline compliance metrics such as PPE, blocked emergency exits, powered industrial truck risk, and it's doing it in a continuous way, so it gives you a really accurate picture of compliance and not just point in time observations, which just frees up the time of that safety professional so that you can focus on those things that are more strategic, the real issues at hand, solutioning, etc. And then starts to get you towards that new compliance mindset where you're less focused on these individual events of, oh, I saw the emergency exit was blocked yesterday, so I'm going to mark that down as a near miss or a hazard. And you can now shift to more of like a assurance-based mindset, which is that emergency exit is hazard free 99% of the time, which allows you to take your leading indicator, or excuse me, your incentive based programs, not the programs of the 1990s where you were potentially incentivizing somebody to not report injuries, and making them more leading indicator based, which is all the more exciting. Ultimately, empowering your workers to encourage each other to do the right thing, which we all know the more that occurs, the more it just becomes a behavior and a habit. So let's talk a little bit about the convergence here with Hop, Tim. What are your thoughts? And if you could, because we have some new people in the room, can you set the baseline on what Hop is?
Yeah, that's great. I will use a term that you just brought up earlier in terms of positive reinforcement and incentivizing. Now, we're not saying that HOP requires you to dangle a carrot. Actually, it's the opposite of that. But if you wanted to look at computer vision AI as a tool for positive reinforcement, you'll find that 98% of your workforce is actually doing the job that you've asked them to do. But what we end up focusing on is the negative 2% or the mistakes. Well, principle number one in HOP is that error is inevitable. And I know a lot of you will have a hard time telling your CEO, well, we're just bound to make mistakes. Well, you could try to control them to the best of your ability. But as we move to number two, if a person makes a mistake, the last thing you want to do is put them on blast or at least blame, because blame fixes nothing. And as these principles start to guide you, you can strategically set up operationalizing them. That's a big word, but what do you actually have to do? Well, tell every supervisor we don't want to blame our employees for their mistakes. That takes care of the first two. I've already alluded to the third one where context drives behavior. And to give you kind of a low level term, if you're driving for 10,000 widgets to be produced in an hour and you put that up on a production board and then you end up not meeting that goal, it's likely that those people who didn't reach those goals will actually start taking shortcuts 2 or 3 hours later just to achieve the day end goal. So context drives behavior. And then finally, you've got learning. We talked about learning. We talked about learning for the future. I want you to know that learning is vital and getting your employees to participate right up front, especially when we've identified hazards through computer vision AI. Now you can actually get them involved on how to control it because you've captured it together. That's human performance in a nutshell. And then finally, how we respond matters. The leadership and your response, these five principles, if you fire employees for not meeting their goals, well, they're going to realize that that's something that you do. And so then now you've got a bunch of people hiding in the background and never wanting to talk to you ever again because, well, frankly, they're just too scared to lose their job. That's a problem. And so if we can identify systems that'll help us get those people to speak up, like psychological safety or stop, think, act, or even stop work authority, that gets to that bottom line. And that's how HOP can introduce the importance of using something like capacity for computer vision AI.
Awesome, Tim. That's really great. And kind of rounding out the, advancing hop with CV AI, I think there's a couple things that I wanted to call out. And really not necessarily all of them, but the third one here, the data that you're getting out of a system like this through your existing security cameras is backed by these context-rich video clips. So you're not only getting the point in time information where you're actually seeing the risk occur, but you're getting this continuous monitoring and this continuous trending of data, so that when you do make a decision or you do decide to build a business case for actually implementing a control, your leadership is going to respond positively because it's so heavily backed by data and you're, making a very strategic play. Um, let's kind of talk about the true convergence of these three things: compliance, HOP, and computer vision AI, or as we're kind of terming it, the future of workplace safety. By talking about a customer case study that really and did all the things that we've talked about thus far and saw some really tremendous results. Carlex is a major automotive glass manufacturer and a customer of ours here at Voxel. For those of you who don't know, we do at Voxel. We utilize existing security camera infrastructure. We run those computer vision AI models through that existing security camera infrastructure to identify some of the risks like we showed you before in real time. And Carlex did just that at their Van Noor facility. Um, they were very interested in strengthening their safety culture, but they lacked consistent data, needed to spot those leading indicators, and they had a limited capacity for floor observations, obviously competing priorities for their safety and their operations folks. And they had many new leaders that just needed that objective visibility and wanted to know where to focus their efforts. So they implemented computer vision AI platform from Voxel in that Van Noor plant, and they automated their personal protective equipment and powered industrial truck safety observations, giving them that 24/7 visibility without adding any actual workload. And then also in partnership with their union, because they're a UAW shop, being a tier one auto parts supplier, they ensured that the system was used not only for learning and process was used for only, excuse me, for learning and process improvement. No punitive actions were taken against their workers, giving them that visibility that they needed into how the work was actually being done. So, Tim, when I say that, does that sound like, a convergence of HOP and CVAI and compliance?
All of it. I'm amazed that an organization would want to start to improve, because sometimes a lot of organizations get really happy with where they are, and and you could use the term or not, but organizational complacence will kick you later on down the road. And in this case, if you're willing to improve a little bit, your investment into something like this actually shows, and then the data starts to kick in, and then the things that are intangible, like, I don't know, you said it earlier, PPE and PIT, the powered industrial trucks activity. I think that what ends up happening is they get an anecdotal feeling that things are starting to change. And you refer to it as culture, but the convergence of all three of these is very evident in this case study. And I think it's extremely important. And that first step on that journey, that destination, or that new lens that we want people to wear, is just to want to improve. And that brings all three of these things together. So that was nicely said, Skipper.
Yeah, thanks. You're right, Tim. And they were able to see some really tremendous results because they were freeing up that time of their team to focus on the actual solutions and not just identifying the risk. They were able to drive their safety vest compliance again from an assurance rate, not just individual events, up by 86%, an area where they had limited visibility before, and then cutting their no stop and their no stop at door intersections and their powered industrial truck risk down by 37 and 47% respectively. It also
Yeah.
accelerated that cultural shift. It made work as it's done visible, supporting that non-punitive learning, and allowed them to, again, focus on the solutioning. So overall, really great success for this customer in just a matter of months.
You
We've
said
got to
work is
go ahead.
visible. That's really good. I mean, we talked about work as imagined versus work as done, and they're proving that point here, because we can imagine a lot of improvement. But then again, if we've got distracted forklift operators and we don't identify it, we don't see it through a new lens, then you're never going to improve. And then they're going to find reasons why they're actually distracted, because there's too many things to do. And that was perfectly well stated. I think that that wraps up a nice little bow on the convergence.
I agree. So we've got a few minutes left. I know we've got a pretty full room here. We'd love to hear some questions. If you have questions, I'd recommend that you put them into the chat, and then we'll get through as many as we can. And if there's more that are left hanging, we can send them out as a follow-up. So Mello, I know you're monitoring the chat. Have you seen anything in here? No questions yet. Somebody's got to have something, or Tim and I will find another 20 things to talk about.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not that I want to seed a question, but one of the attendees, as I'm looking at the list, is Larry Perlman. We were in Cincinnati together a couple weeks ago talking about the convergence of a lot of these activities. And, there's a lot of fear still out there. And I'm not necessarily saying that you're going to walk into a bar and you're going to have that red lens of Terminator 2 as you're walking into the bar that's going to give you a full-blown risk assessment. That's not what this is about. It's just the improvement of, can we learn from these activities together? And I know that there will be a lot of fear out there, but I see a couple of questions coming in.
Well, it looks like we have Willie Sees has raised his hand as well. If Willie, if you want to unmute and ask it, go right ahead.
Hmm. Oh, there he is. Chat's disabled. So the Q&A for Willie. Willie, if you just want to type in your question, we'll get to it. While we're waiting for Willie's question, we got Leslie Wills. They want to know if they could show us the software in action again. I suspect that we probably don't have the time for that, but if you wanted to set something up, can they do that, Skipper, and get a
Yeah,
demo?
absolutely. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You also have the requested a demo QR code here. More than happy to set that up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Willie. Did you have
Okay.
something?
Thank you. Yeah, how's everyone doing today? Just quick question. I know you mentioned that there was a union environment that
Yes.
you actually used that camera system in. So I wanted to know what type of pushback did you receive? Do you often receive that pushback in those union environments? And what did you use to kind of, steer that boat in the direction to say, hey, we're wanting to use this software for the betterment and not so much for punitive reasons?
I mean, Willie, you've already started to answer your own question, which I absolutely love. But really, it comes down to a few things. First off, the usage of camera systems, especially security camera systems, which is what we tap into and work with, is generally addressed through a collective bargaining agreement. So there's already usually an understanding as to what those systems can and can't be used for. With that being said, over communicating around what the system is going to be used for and what actions are going to be taken and not taken is very important upfront. Also, with this type of technology, depending on your vendor of choice, you have the ability to blur faces, blur bodies, or completely anonymize the data for some people and for everyone within your organization so that you're really focusing more on the process and less on the individual. Does that make sense, Willie? Great. I know we're right at time. I don't see anything else coming in through the chat. If anybody has anything to add, we're happy to hang on here for a minute or two. But I'd like to thank everybody. And if you're interested in learning more about Voxel or more about human and organization performance, you can scan the QR code here, reach out to Tim and I on LinkedIn, and be more than happy to chat with you.
Nice job.
Thanks, everybody, for coming today.
I'll head backstage.